Pause for a second and take a real breath. You've been replaying that decision in your mind, turning it over from every angle, wondering if you crossed a line you weren't supposed to cross. But listen carefully. You're here, in this exact moment, because something deeper is interrupting that spiral to tell you one simple truth. You didn't destroy your future. What you did was not a failure. And it wasn't you falling out of alignment. Yes, you stepped away from what felt certain. Yes, you chose something unfamiliar over what was expected. But here is what most people never realize. You were never meant to live your life following a fixed script. You were meant to evolve it. This moment right now is your confirmation. That weight in your chest, that quiet fear that maybe you misread everything, is about to lose its grip on you. You are not being corrected for making a bold move. If anything, your willingness to choose differently has opened a door most people never even see. Stay with this, because what you set in motion didn't just affect you. It changed the direction of everything connected to you. Pay attention to how your body has been reacting lately. The tension that won't fully go away. The restless nights where your thoughts keep looping when everything else is quiet. That deep fatigue, that sleep doesn't seem to fix. It's not random. It's what happens when your mind is trying to process a shift it wasn't trained to understand. You feel drained because part of you believes you made the wrong call, and that belief is heavy. Think back to right after you made that decision. You stepped away from something stable. You said no when it would have been easier to say yes. You created space where people expected consistency. And when everything went quiet, the doubt showed up. That question hit you hard. Did I just mess everything up? Did I walk away from something I was supposed to keep? Stay here with me for a moment, because by the end of this, you're going to see why that fear doesn't hold up. You're going to understand what actually happens when you choose growth over comfort. And you're going to leave with a clearer sense of where you stand now. What you're feeling right now feels like guilt. It feels like you broke an unspoken rule. And now you're waiting for consequences. But that's not what this is. What you're feeling is the discomfort of expanding beyond something that once fit you. When something grows, it doesn't stay contained forever. There's always a moment where it has to push past its old limits. From the outside, that can look like loss or disruption. But from a wider view, it's progress. You're not carrying guilt because you did something wrong. You're carrying the tension of becoming someone new. A lot of people were taught that life follows one straight path, that there's a single right direction, and if you step off it, everything falls apart. So when you make a move that doesn't match that idea, your mind reacts with fear. It assumes something has gone wrong. But life doesn't work like a fragile plan that breaks the moment you adjust it. It works more like a system that adapts. When you change direction, it doesn't collapse. It reorganizes. New options appear that weren't visible before. That situation you walked away from felt like the destination. It looked safe. It made sense to everyone around you. But sometimes what looks like the final step is actually just preparation. Growth always involves pressure. It requires you to move beyond what's familiar. The expectations you were carrying, the roles you were playing, all of that built something in you. And eventually, you reach a point where staying the same would hold you back more than stepping forward. There's a pattern you can see if you look at turning points throughout history and in people's lives. Moments where something expected gets disrupted, where a decision breaks away from what was planned. And instead of everything falling apart, something new begins to take shape. What matters is not that the original path changed. What matters is what happens after. Right now, it might feel like everything went quiet, like you made your move and now you're left waiting with no clear response. It's easy to interpret that silence as a sign that something is wrong. But silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means things are shifting in ways you can't see yet. It's the space where adjustments happen before results show up. You're not stuck. You're in between. And here's something important to understand. When you step away from what's predictable, you're not losing control. You're actually stepping into a different kind of responsibility. For a long time, you might have thought that the right way to move forward was to follow what was already laid out, to wait for clear direction before taking action. But there comes a point where growth requires something else. It requires you to make decisions without having the full map, to trust your judgment even when it feels uncertain. That moment you chose differently wasn't you going off track. It was you starting to take ownership of your direction. And that can feel uncomfortable. Because now, the outcome depends more on your choices than on a predefined path. Let me ask you something. When did you start believing that your potential had to fit inside a narrow version of what was expected? Why assume that wanting something bigger or different means you're out of alignment? Those instincts you felt, the ones that pushed you to make that decision, didn't come from nowhere. They were signals that something needed to change. You're not navigating the same situation anymore. You're building something new, even if you can't fully see it yet. And that comes with a cost. When you make a shift like this, it doesn't just affect your plans. It affects your habits, your relationships, and how you see yourself. That's why you might feel physically and emotionally off balance. You might notice your energy fluctuating, moments where you feel clear, followed by moments of doubt, changes in what you're willing to tolerate, distance forming in places where there used to be comfort. That doesn't mean something is wrong. It means things are adjusting. Not everyone will move with you into the next phase of your life. Some connections were built around who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And losing that familiarity can feel like isolation, but sometimes it's actually space being created for something more aligned with where you're going. Before we go further, take a second and acknowledge this. If this message is hitting something real for you, just pause and recognize that you're not the only one going through it. Now, let's talk about the mental side of this. That voice telling you that you made a mistake, it's not coming from certainty. It's coming from unfamiliarity. You feel like an outsider in your own life right now because you're in territory you haven't experienced before. There's no reference point, no clear comparison, and that creates doubt. But here's the shift. Instead of seeing that as a sign you're in the wrong place, consider that it might mean you're in a new place. Growth often feels like uncertainty before it feels like confidence. You're not behind. You're early in a process that hasn't fully unfolded yet. So what do you do with that? You simplify. You focus on what you can control. Your attention, your energy, your daily actions. Because what you consistently give your focus to will shape what comes next. If you keep feeding fear, you'll reinforce it. If you start feeding clarity, even in small ways, things begin to stabilize. There's a story about someone who walked away from a secure path to pursue something that didn't have immediate results. For weeks, nothing seemed to happen. No progress, no validation, no clear sign they made the right move. It felt like everything had stalled, but they stayed with it. They didn't go back to what was comfortable. And eventually, things started to shift. Opportunities showed up that weren't visible before. Connections formed that wouldn't have happened on the old path. What looked like a delay was actually a setup. You're in a similar phase right now, and I want you to realize something. You're not the same person who made that decision a short time ago. Even if everything around you hasn't caught up yet, something in you already has. So let's close this in a way that actually helps you move forward. You don't need to have everything figured out tomorrow. You don't need perfect certainty before taking your next step. What you need is consistency. Pay attention to what you let into your mind each day. Be selective with what you focus on. Give yourself space to adjust without rushing to label the decision as right or wrong. And most importantly, stop assuming that discomfort means failure. Sometimes it's just part of the transition. If you're ready to stop carrying that weight alone, go ahead and write, "I'm moving forward" in the comments. Let that be your way of acknowledging where you are right now. And if this helped you see your situation a little more clearly, share it with someone who might be questioning their own decision. You didn't ruin anything. You started something.